It starts quietly. No screaming, no crash, just a shift. You're 7 years old, staring into the tired, trembling eyes of a parent who is falling apart. Maybe it's addiction. Maybe it's rage. Maybe it's the kind of sadness that fills a room without saying a word. And without anyone telling you, something clicks deep inside your nervous system. A silent rule gets written across your childhood. If I don't hold everything together, no one will. This is how a child disappears, not physically, but emotionally, psychologically. They don't run away. They fold. They shrink themselves. They adapt. They smile more. They cry less. They read the room before they speak. They become the peacekeeper, the emotional sponge, the one who senses tension before it enters the room. They grow up and fast forward, little adults with tiny bodies and heavy souls, and the world loves them for it. You're so mature. You're so strong. You're so responsible. But no one stops to ask, at what cost? This is the invisible grief of the child who grew up too fast. And today we're going to walk into that grief, not to wallow in it, but to finally name it. Because if you don't understand what happened to you, you'll keep living like it's still happening. You'll recreate the survival patterns that once kept you alive, even if now they're slowly killing you. Let's start with what's happening beneath the surface. When a child is forced to emotionally support adults when instead of being supported, psychology has a name for it: parentification. It's when a child becomes the caregiver, the protector, the therapist, the calm in the storm. This isn't just sad, it's traumatic. It rewires the brain, because when your little nervous system is put in charge of emotional regulation, your own and everyone else's, it breeds something called hypervigilance. You're always scanning for danger. You walk on eggshells. You become the emotional thermostat of the household. If you stay calm, maybe they won't explode. You learn that love is a transaction. If I'm useful, maybe they'll keep me. You learn that your needs are dangerous, and their needs are urgent, so you disappear, not physically, but emotionally. And in your place grows a version of you that performs. You become the good kid, the quiet achiever, the funny one, the over-responsible one, the one who never asks for anything. And you wear that identity so well, even you forget it's a mask. But somewhere deep inside something hurts, something aches, because the child you buried didn't die. They're still in there, screaming in silence. Why didn't anyone protect me? As you grow, the symptoms change shape, but they never disappear. You become hyper-independent. You push people away before they can disappoint you. You don't know how to rest without guilt. You confuse anxiety with productivity. And the worst part? You might not even realize you're still living in survival mode. Because when dysfunction is normalized early, your nervous system doesn't register it as chaos. It registers it as home. Stillness makes you twitchy. Peace feels unsafe. Love feels like a trap. This is the psychology of a child who was never allowed to be a child. And the damage? It's not just emotional, it's developmental. It rewires your self-worth, your trust in others, your idea of safety, your entire internal map of the world. You might wonder, why would any child take that role? Because children will do anything for attachment, even abandon themselves. The decision isn't conscious, it's biological. In the absence of protection, the child sacrifices authenticity for belonging. That's not weakness. That's not being too sensitive. That's survival. But here's the tragedy. What saved you then imprisons you now. So many of us are walking around as high-functioning adults, with terrified, exhausted, neglected inner children secretly running the show. We overachieve to feel worthy. We stay silent to avoid rejection. We people-please until we forget what our needs even are. We take care of everyone, and secretly pray that someone will finally ask, "Are you okay?" We fantasize about falling apart just once and being held instead of blamed, seen instead of ignored. But that's not the fantasy of your adult self. That's the cry of the child who was never allowed to fall apart. And this is where healing begins, not with fixing, not with coping, not with forcing yourself to get over it. Healing begins with witnessing, because until you validate what happened, you'll keep gaslighting yourself with, "It wasn't that bad. Other people had it worse." I turned out fine. But fine is a mask too. And if you're reading this, deep down, you already know that. So what happens to that child when they grow up? They become adults who never feel safe, and even in calm rooms. They become lovers who mistake tenderness for manipulation. They become friends who give everything, but feel guilty receiving anything back. They become the kind of people who apologize for crying, who flinch at compliments, who confuse exhaustion with accomplishment. They become people who don't know how to just be, unless they're being useful. This is the cost of growing up too fast. Because when your childhood taught you to be strong instead of soft, quiet instead of honest, and to fix others while ignoring yourself, you inherit an adulthood that feels heavy. You live holding your breath, waiting for someone to give you permission to finally let go. But here's the truth. No one is coming to rescue the child you buried. You are the one who must go back and find them. You are the one who must say what no one else ever did. You didn't deserve that. You were just a kid. You get to rest now. This is the beginning of shadow work. Not pretending, not bypassing, not hiding behind fake strength, but turning toward the abandoned parts of yourself and whispering, I see you, I hear you. I'm not leaving you behind. And that's when real healing starts, not with noise but with silence, not with pressure, but with presence. Not with trying to become someone new, but remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. Because here's what no one tells you. The child who grew up too fast never really went away. They just learned how to hide, how to smile when they were scared, how to help others so they wouldn't have to feel helpless, how to make themselves small so they wouldn't take up too much space. And when that child isn't acknowledged, they show up in your adult life in 1,000 quiet ways. You become the friend who always listens, but never talks about your own pain. You become the partner who overfunctions, doing everything so you don't feel replaceable. You become the coworker who works overtime without complaining, because praise is the only kind of love you've ever trusted. You become the person who's afraid to say no, because you still believe love is conditional. But these are not personality traits. They're trauma responses. They're survival mechanisms that once served you, but now they sabotage you. You might find yourself in relationship after relationship, where you do all the emotional labor. You communicate, you regulate, you fix, you explain, you soothe, and then wonder why you feel resentful, why you feel exhausted, why you never feel seen. Because somewhere in your nervous system you learned, if I don't carry the relationship, it will fall apart. You learn to be the caretaker, not because you're just that type of person, but because no one ever cared for you. And when you try to break the cycle, you feel guilty. You feel selfish. You feel like you're betraying someone, even if that someone only exists in your nervous system. You might also struggle with boundaries, not because you don't want them, but because saying no still feels like a threat to your safety. You were taught to earn your place, to never be a burden, to make yourself easy to love, by never being difficult to deal with. So you say yes when you mean no. You over-explain, you justify. You try to make sure no one is ever upset with you, and because being loved always came with conditions. But hear this clearly. Love without safety is not love. It's control. And here's the thing. None of this is your fault, but it is your responsibility now. Because if you don't choose to heal, you will continue to live out patterns that are not yours. You'll inherit beliefs that never belong to you. You'll repeat dynamics that hurt you. You'll confuse self-sacrifice with self-worth. So how do you start healing? It begins with asking one of the most important and painful questions you'll ever ask. What did I need back then that I never got? And you sit with whatever answers come. Maybe it's, I needed someone to protect me. I needed to be a kid. I needed someone to notice when I was scared. I needed someone to say I didn't have to be strong all the time. And then you start giving those things to yourself. Little by little, day by day, not perfectly, not instantly, but deliberately. You stop running from your triggers and you start listening to them. Because triggers aren't just reactions, they're messengers. They tell you where your wounds still live. You begin to notice when you're shrinking yourself. You begin to pause when your first instinct is to overgive. You begin to create space for your real emotions, and even the ugly ones, especially the ugly ones. You stop idolizing strength and start honoring your pain, because being strong isn't the goal. Being whole is, you learn how to rest without guilt. You learn how to receive without apology. You learn how to sit with stillness without waiting for something bad to happen. Because guess what? Stillness isn't danger. Love isn't a transaction. And rest isn't laziness, it's repair. You begin to recognize the child inside of you not as a weakness, but as the core of who you are. You begin to parent yourself the way you always needed. With softness, with patience, with unconditional love. You don't gaslight your feelings anymore. You don't minimize your trauma. You don't compare your pain to someone else's and decide it doesn't count. You stop chasing perfection. You start chasing peace. And most importantly, you stop seeking your parents in your partners. You stop choosing people who need saving, just so you don't have to feel helpless again. You stop trying to fix everyone, and finally learn how to be with yourself. Because healing doesn't mean you'll never feel broken again. It means you know how to hold yourself when the pieces fall apart. You become the safe space you never had. You become the voice that says, "It's okay to rest now." You don't have to carry it all anymore. You're allowed to need things too. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. But the child who grew up too fast doesn't need more pain. They need permission to come home. To laugh again, to cry without shame, to play without fear, to rest without guilt. You don't have to be anyone's parent anymore. You don't have to be perfect to be loved. You don't have to earn your right to exist. So if you're someone who grew up too fast, if you're always the strong one, if you're the one everyone leans on but you secretly wish someone would lean back, this is your invitation. Let that child come home. Let them cry. Let them scream. Let them be seen. Because you're not broken. You're becoming whole. You're not dramatic. You're not too much. You're someone who had to grow up in a world that never let you just be a child. But now, you get to choose. You can choose softness. You can choose truth. You can choose to stop surviving and finally start living. Because your childhood may have stolen your innocence, but it did not steal your future. And this time, you get to write the ending. If this spoke to you, even in the smallest way, don't let it disappear in your feed. Take a second to like this video. It tells the algorithm that this message matters. Subscribe if you want more content like this. Deep, honest, and made for people who think and feel deeply. And drop a comment below. What did you need as a child that you never got? Your story might be the exact one someone else needs to hear today.